9th or 10th misdemeanor methamphetamine possession. So I think we're all tired of that, and I think we're gonna see some pushback on that. Now, as far as Oklahoma ever getting to the no bail thing, I can't see it. I can't see it ever happening in Oklahoma, but I bet people in Illinois probably thought the same thing probably a couple years ago, and they're having the same thing just passed, and it's complete chaos in Chicago because of that, that's what I've been told. So, you never know, but it's gonna be up to us to go vote and make sure it doesn't happen. And people are always shocked when I talk about 780, I was talking about earlier. Like, I talk to people all the time, well, I didn't vote for that. Well, you sure did, because it passed by 60% in this county. So somebody voted for it. I think everybody saw marijuana and they thought, well, marijuana, and I maybe agree marijuana possession shouldn't be a felony, ever. But the date rate drug should be, 100%. And I think methamphetamine and heroin should be as well. So I don't think we'll see it in Oklahoma, but I would never have said methamphetamine would have been a misdemeanor in 2015, I would never have said that, so, I don't know.
Thank you.
I have several questions. Do we have a drug task force in Washington County?
We have a community impact team, which is our basically task force for the community, yes.
Okay. How can we have an effective drug court if a urine drug screen doesn't test positive for fentanyl?
I think we have the ability now to do it. 4 months ago, no, we could not have a UA and detect fentanyl. I've not handled the drug court program in about a year. Mr. Buchanan handles it mostly. But I know a year ago we could not do it. I think now we have a way to take a sample and send it to a quick lab and 24 hours later find out if it's using fentanyl or not. That's what I believe, but don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. But you said drug task force. Drug task force is actually a legal term. We don't have a drug task force, but Sergeant Ward and Officer Lemons, they're on a drug team that they investigate drug cases routinely.
So I have a story. My name is Annie. I work in the healthcare field, and I also have been a mother of a drug addict, and he was started at 15 years old from prescription medication. On March 23rd, he died in a car wreck. And I waited for 6 months for the urine drug screen to come back. He was also in drug court. He was also going to be a brand new daddy. Okay. When the drug screen the toxicology came back, he was positive for Xanax, clonazepam, methamphetamine, and fentanyl. And he went to go buy oxycodone. I have been down to the police station. I have given him that person's name. Nothing. I have their tag number. I know where they live. And if you want to help these kids, I think if you get these mothers and dads out there to run these people off, that's where it's going to win, or maybe can win. I appreciate everything that you do. I work every day. I see addicts on my job. They're going to be 6 feet under soon because of this crisis. And we just need to really stick together as a community. Thank you.
So I want to thank everybody for their help in this, but I want to ask a couple of questions. First of all, I get calls from citizens saying, why are police out there stopping me for traffic stops when we got this fentanyl problem going on? Can you speak to how traffic enforcement and traffic stops help with this fentanyl problem? And also, can you talk to our K-9 program and how our K-9 program is trained to help with this fentanyl issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're out here making traffic stops every day for minor infractions. A lot of people get upset with that, but and that's our probable cause something when we say the infraction might be a brake light, a tag light, or anything like that. But during these minor infractions, it leads us to other things. It could be drug investigations. That's where we find probably the most part of our drugs are on these traffic stops. These drug dealers, that's their weakest point. run the dog around any car that we suspect of narcotic users or dealers or anything like that, as long as we don't extend the time length of the traffic stop. So we've recovered tons of fentanyl off of dog alerts, but our dogs do not alert specifically to fentanyl because you can have a prescription for fentanyl, if you will. So our dogs are only certified to take the odors of methamphetamine, cocaine, and heroin.
Hello, my name is Raul. Nurse here in Bartlesville. I was actually nursing in the city, but my question is for the doctors, and especially Dr. Larry. The question is, I know people do drugs all the time, but this is more for the youth. Kids are not going to stop doing drugs. I mean, I hate to say it, you can tell them don't do this, don't do that, but my question is for the doctor. What do you guys recommend telling these kids and their parents? What do you tell them? Like, do you want to be with them during it or something like that? And what do you? Because kids are gonna do drugs. I mean, everybody's done probably something here in their lives. And then now, I mean, sometimes happens, but now, like I said, it takes that one time. Just you miss it one time, especially with the fentanyl and stuff. And people are not taking fentanyl, they're taking something else and it has fentanyl in it. People are not wanting to take this fentanyl here. But the question is really what do you recommend parents talk to their children, to get, basically ask them what's going on, how do you recommend, because I know you deal with a bunch of athletes and a bunch of, adolescents and stuff like that, and when I was that age, I didn't want to talk to my parents about, about alcohol or drugs and like that. I want to just, I'm going to do it no matter what, probably. But, I mean, it sounds horrible to say, but kids are going to do drugs. I mean, you can say they're not going to do it, but one day they probably will, and that one time they're going to mess it up. But what do you recommend parents to basically to make it more safe? I mean, do you tell them to keep narking around them? Do you tell them just, what do you think?
Well, I appreciate the question. Yeah, I have a hard time sometimes, I think probably because I think slowly, maybe too slow, but I think that a lot of times, so many times the symptoms are magnified. I think, I've been in schools, I started out working in drug court, that's how I began my career, by accidentally applying to work in drug court around 15 years ago. I didn't even know what it was. I thought, I just had no idea that there was such a thing. But I'm really grateful I got involved in it. I've also worked in school. I've been in psychoeducational programs. Even just recently, I've been into doing school systems, working with the young, I think it's 7th and 8th graders, going in every week. And I think that a lot of times we diagnose, I think we need to ask questions around what is the vacuum that this drug is filling? And I don't think that question is asked enough. I think that there are too many words, too many statistics, too many quote unquote experts. And maybe there's not enough street out of me. I mean, I'm in large part, I grew up around the streets and in the streets as a youth, so I get it. But I heard the young lady earlier say something about parents being around. And I think that for me, that was getting closer to home. I had somebody come in recently and say to me, "Hey Larry, I had a young man in his late 20s say to me something that I think is a metaphor. He said, I need a mentor. I don't need just counseling. I don't need therapy. I don't need classes. He said, I need somebody in my life on life. Not just an educational class and send me home, and not just statistics. So we can't be risk averse. So what I hear when you say kids are going to use drugs, what I hear is we can't eliminate risk from life. No, you can't. I have 3 kids, so I have a vested interest. I have 3 young kids, a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and they're up and come in, one of them is at Central, you know, so I deal with real life, just like everybody else, and I have those same concerns, but I cannot eliminate risk. I can be in his life, and I can try to do the best I can to, work on evaluating what is the vacuum in my home, in the community in which I live, and do some constructive things to try to deal with this kind of risk for my son. But do I have a direct question on what to do? Not necessarily different from some of the things that you've already heard. But when I talk to those young men, as I think about you asking the question, say at Dewey in the past few months, what I would see in their eyes was a hunger and a thirst that wanted to know, what is life? What should I live? What should I live for? How now shall I live? You tell me not to do this, well, what should I do? What does it mean for my life to be enriched in such a way that I become less and less vulnerable to the types of risk that something like fentanyl offers?
I have a question. My son is actively using fentanyl. What can I do? I don't know what to do. Anybody? I mean, I'm so scared to death he's gonna be dead.
Well, after my pontificating, I figure I better chime in and say real quickly, I obviously would say find resources and get help right away
I
within the
can't get him to do it. He won't listen to me.
Okay.
I mean, what do you do?
Well, I would be given a monologue without knowing the details, but sometimes if they won't go get help, there's ways that they'll act out that will force them into help or into being bound as a juvenile.
He's 30 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that goes out the window.
Yeah.
I'll let somebody else try to answer this question. I'll just say it's very, very difficult to get somebody else who won't get help. You hear people talk about rock bottom and things like that, and some of that, I must say, is true. Without the will of the individual, unless law enforcement gets involved because of something that they've done,
Right.
or the hospital gets involved.
But like they're saying, I mean, if he gets in trouble, it's a misdemeanor. I mean, it's like getting a ticket. He's not gonna be held accountable. He
Yeah.
can lose his life.
And I would have to defer to somebody else to comment on that.
That's the problem with Oklahoma, is the way it is right now. If you're a 30-year-old man and you choose to be a drug addict, that's your right to do that, because if you're just having user amounts of whatever that is, I don't know what you do. This is a question we get all the time, what do you do? If it gets to the point where they're a danger to themselves or others, it becomes a mental health issue like that, you can come to the DA's office and do what's called a third-party affidavit, and we can get them stabilized. We're talking, that's like a 3-day fix. That's not a long-term fix.
That's not.
Long-term, I don't know what you do. This is a question we get weekly phone calls, and I don't know what you do. The DA's office does not have really an answer for this. It's just, I don't know.
I'm sorry, sir, but there is no 3-day fix.
There's not a 3-day fix, you're right. It's a 3-day release, what it is for the family usually.
Just to kind of add to that, it's, and these gentlemen here, you're absolutely right. It's been shown that only those that are willing to go to rehab are gonna be the ones who could benefit from it. If you're not willing to go to treatment, there's no, it's not gonna take. As far as what we can do now, I'll hit it again, because I would have an Narcan at home. It's not gonna fix the addiction, but it sure could save a life. Certainly if you're nearby when it happens. If he's not gonna listen to getting treatment, if there's any way you can convince him to, at the very least, moms say, keep Narcan nearby or wherever he uses, have it available, because it is life-saving. It just certainly won't fix the problem, but, it can certainly save lives.
At some point, we're doing harm reduction. Another thing sometimes I refer family members to is something like Al-Anon, where you find, you hear about NA, and a lot of people don't know about things like Al-Anon, which is a support group for people who have a family member who's suffering from addiction. And they offer support, education, and they wrap their arms around family members and people whose loved ones they're watching suffer. And I think that sometimes that can be a support in the meantime.
I'll add to that, medication-assisted treatment, methadone, buprenorphine. If you can get him, and I know that's going to be tough.
I got him into the methadone once, he was in there for a while, and went back.
And that's
He was on heroin for a while, now it's fentanyl.
but that's going to be a struggle, obviously, as a young adult and stuff like that. But for somebody that is in the thralls of addiction, and if he's willingly taking fentanyl, it's going to be tough. But I think, if at all possible, I think that would be a good start to try, a good effort to try again. But you've already mentioned it, and these people already have as well up here. It's going to be tough if he doesn't want to do it. The doctor mentioned rock bottom. Absolutely. Sometimes that's what it takes, and they won't listen to anybody else.
Sometimes rock bottom with fentanyl
Is the end.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm just scared to death every time I hear a siren.
Yeah, that's, Narcan and naloxone, multiple doses of that. I know that's something that, I don't know if we've talked about or not, but, with fentanyl, it often takes more than one dose of Narcan to bring them out of it and stuff. So, just make sure you have whatever you can, in case it does happen.
Where do I get it?
Pharmacy.
Pharmacy?
Yeah, all pharmacies carry them. I believe the state has that.
How much does it
So
cost?
right back there.
Right back behind you, they've got some.
Yeah, there you go. So, there you go. And then if you have some other people that aren't here, then I think there is a, free Narcan that can be mailed to you.
Yeah, I have that.
Okay. Okay.
No one, and then.
There's places in town that you can get Narcan for free, right now, Health Center, you can walk in, not use minor, you can get Narcan from them. There's, I believe, the Family Health Center on Hensley and 123. I believe they're also another place, and there may be some more, but those are the two that I know.
And also, please don't pay attention to the expiration dates on Narcan. It's better to have many, if it's 2, 3, 4 years expired, rather than nothing at all.
I do. I understand that there is a demand for fentanyl in this community, as getting as that reality is. Mr. Routke, you mentioned that addiction is a beast, and Ms. Salzman, you first brought up experimentation tonight, and we've talked about it several times since then. I think most of us here probably understand those things pretty well at this point, experimentation and addiction. I'm having trouble understanding something else that you mentioned. The trafficking of fentanyl through contaminating or lacing other products undisclosed to the customer. Where is the demand for laced or contaminated pharmaceutical products, whether it's meth, pot, etc., coming from if the customer doesn't even know that they're buying fentanyl? How do the manufacturers or distributors who spread this make their money? Where is the demand coming from if their customers don't even know they're buying fentanyl?
Darren could probably talk a little bit about this as well, but, as far as the manufacturers and distributors, in this instance, for the laced products we're talking about, our drug dealers, we're talking about cartel. We're not talking about our pharmacies or our doctors or clinics and stuff. So where does the demand come from if they don't know what they're getting? You're right, they're not looking for fentanyl, but your cartels are looking to get more people addicted to their product. So if that means costing a few people their lives, cartels don't care about that.
because they didn't know they ingested it, they didn't know that they had it.
Well, because, for instance, if they're using, let's say, methamphetamine, so now the methamphetamine is not getting them the high, if you want to call it that. I struggle to say that, fentanyl is a high because it's a depressant, but that essentially that's what it is. So the methamphetamine that they used to was perfect for them. They had their dosage right, for whatever reason, whatever it was perfect for them, and they got that laced dose. Well, now they've got a new, I guess, they're looking for this new high. They're looking for what they don't know what it is. They might not know.
It's a higher potency.
Yeah, so they're looking for something else in there that gives them that euphoric feeling. And so either they might figure it out from somebody telling them or from experimenting with something else. And then when they finally find it, they go to, let's say, they might go to cocaine. Well, that wasn't it. Methamphetamine maybe gave them a better high than that. They're still looking for what it was they had. And then they figure out, okay, so they try heroin, or maybe they try fentanyl and figure out that's what it is. So, and also you've got to consider fentanyl's cheap. We talked about how cheap it's become. It's cheap, so they're using it as a cut into these other drugs and stuff, because it just increases the quantity for a cheap price. So they're getting more, the suppliers and cartels are getting more bang for their buck, essentially. They're selling more product out there and getting more money for it. They're not going to get anything out of it anymore.
I mean, I agree, it's exactly what both said.
And anecdotally, I would say that last statement is the one that I was thinking about, the fentanyl price now with it being so inexpensive. What I've heard from therapists or counselors who work with clients or patients is that they'll tell them, that they're filling these drugs, and that the product, it's helping with the profit, I guess, because fentanyl is so inexpensive that it serves as a filler.
And this is pretty much the purview of the district attorneys that I've spoken with. Have you guys begun processing the fatality overdoses as homicide from jump? If not, is that something you look to do at the incoming of your administration?
So, I think the problem is, like the prosecutor right now, we felt like it's probably going to be the positive was a fentanyl overdose, but it took 5 or 6 months. Or was it? It was about 6 months, wasn't it?
That's, you can count about 5 or 6 every time.
The toxicology and the medical results takes that long to get there, to get that confirmation. And then you gotta go back 6 months to try to reinvent the wheel, basically. In that particular case, though, I can't get into details of it because it's very complicated, and because I can't, preach to my potential jurors out here about it either. But we got lucky because the OBN executed a search warrant the very next day on the guy we suspected of selling the pill. A lot of things kind of fell into place on that, and we got lucky. That's when we were able to prosecute that case where we are. And most of the time, like, tracking that person down who sold that pill is almost impossible because you can't even talk about it. And then you also got to prove, in essence, that pill that person sold is a pill that killed that person. And that's incredibly hard to do because, pills get mixed and matched and all those kind of things. So but as far as do you immediately treat it as a homicide, it's hard to say because I think it's something, I get a call like that, like tomorrow, we've had an OD tonight that died. I think today we treat it as a homicide, we can go forth and investigate it that way. But I don't think 2 years ago it was on the radar to do it this way because frankly, people don't OD on methamphetamine to the point they die nearly like they do fentanyl. Not to this quickly, not this little amount, those kind of things. So it's kind of opened our eyes to how to investigate it too, because it is the second one in the entire state that was being prosecuted. We really didn't have a path to follow to investigate this case. We were kind of, let's say, making it as we went along. But we were doing our best to figure out how to investigate this at the time it's being investigated. I think it's fair, Ward?
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, folks, we have time for just a couple more questions. I'm gonna
206, the FDA never checked any of the things coming in that we call generic drugs. And they would find occasionally, the pharmacist would go into it and they would find that there would be wallpaper paste or anything in it, you know, that really didn't have the full drug. And I was wondering, since then, is the FDA doing anything to check the drugs that are coming into our country from foreign countries? Because it could be in anybody's medicine and kill us without a shot.
I don't know, none of us up here obviously work for the FDA. I think Darren might be closest working for the federal government, which is, the DEA is definitely not the FDA. And what you're speaking about is non-controlled drugs, which is a little bit out of our purview of law enforcement here, because we deal with our controlled dangerous substances, our oxycodones and things like that. I do know that the FDA has identified a lot of issues with that, identified a lot of the problems with the DEA has as well, as far as attempting to work with China, our State Department attempting to work with China, and shutting down some of the manufacturers of some of these chemical companies. But to completely answer your question, I don't have a great answer for that. We work with the FDA, but again, it's just with our controlled drugs. We have a very good grasp on what is in our control drugs, our oxycodone, our hydrocodone, our alprazolam, absolutely. But the non-controlled, I hate to say it, but I think that they probably get a little less attention than our controlled drugs, because they're not something that's really susceptible to much abuse.
But if it wasn't the narcotic, it could be just a prescription for high blood pressure or something. What's to keep them putting a little bit of fentanyl in?
So,
very good point.
So most of our prescription medications, even non-controlled, like non-narcotic prescription medications, they come from the pharmaceutical companies in the U.S. and I'd have to double check, but for the most part, they are manufactured in the U.S. And there may be like a few here and there, but medications that are over in Great Britain, they have their own pharmaceutical companies that manufacture those, and so the U.S. Pfizer has a big company up in Michigan, and so those medications are tracked pretty regularly. Every once in a while, you'll get an update from your pharmacy that says, "Oh, we found that maybe something got into this batch of high blood pressure medicine. When you take that one off the market." So they're checking these regularly. I can't say, don't hold me to it, but from my understanding, and I'll have to double check, but most of the prescription medications in the U.S. are made locally.
Sarah? I worked in the school system when I'm here in town, and I'm kind of nervous about you said the fentanyl, like on the officer, he had gloves on, he was just touching it to put it into evidence, and it was affecting him. What would happen to me if I suspected one of my students was having an overdose and I went to give them the spray of the Narcan? Because my students are like my kids. And I'm not gonna stop to think to put on the gloves, and put on the protective gear before I give that student, especially if I think they're dying. Because my heart would just go out. And there's just no way I would be able to take time to protect myself and watch my child lay there on the floor and die.
Reference to the exposure part, the only way to do it, there's not really a good way. You gotta do it very quickly, obviously. All of us, before we even mess with it, is carry the gloves and the mask and eyeglasses and stuff like that. But in that certain situation, there's not just a great answer how you need to do it. Hopefully, maybe we can get with everybody and have that stuff ready and available for the schools. Unfortunately, we're probably to where we need to start doing that, have everything readily available for everybody. And start teaching everybody. It goes back to education on how we do things. So I think that's something we all need to get together as a community and start working on.
Yeah, and I'll add just a little bit to that. too. Don't let the fear of that stop you from obviously trying to save that child's life. But it's not quite, powdered fentanyl is absolutely probably, and if we ever get to the point of liquid fentanyl, fentanyl suspended in liquid, absolutely the most dangerous out there. Inhalation of fentanyl powder is going to be rapid. It's going to be a rapid downturn for the human body. What you are likely, I'm not going to, encompass this in every instance, but what you're likely to see in the schools is going to be pills. Exposure to that is not likely, unless you were just covered in sweat or water or something like that, and you get it on your skin, it's not likely to absorb into your skin to a point where it's going to cause an overdose, immediately. If you do touch something you suspect to be fentanyl, obviously, as quick as you can, you want to get that rinsed off of your body, not with an alcohol-based substance, obviously, but you want to get that washed off. But if you come across something that's powder, definitely, I'd say the same thing. You do need to probably glove up and get a mask on or something like that, because that is very dangerous stuff. But I don't want to scare people. That is not what we see a lot in Oklahoma at the user level. We do see powder. You saw some of the pictures up there of the powder that we see, but most of the stuff at the user level is in your tablet form in Oklahoma currently.
All right, folks, we have time for one more question. We're gonna have.
Please. I lost my oldest daughter August 13th, 2 days before my birthday. I had her home for 52 days, 11 days of rehab, 20 days after Hillcrest Heart. I found out she had an 8% ejection fraction. That's basically a non-functional heart. Our left ventricle pumps most of our blood. I was told she had 2 weeks to live. She started fooling around with fentanyl back in March. I know for a fact she was doing meth.